Chapter 4, The Witnesses. The following 12 witnesses were made aware of Mr. Johnson's scheme during the video store's investigation. Since I am writing this expose, you could call me witness number 13. I don't mention the names of the witnesses. Witness number 1 was the owner of the video store where Mr. Johnson was employed for almost a year and where he perpetrated his scheme. He worked very closely with the banks and Frank and had access to the personal information of all the witnesses as well as the evidence. Witness number 2 was Frank, who worked very closely with the owner of the video store in the investigation of wrongdoing by Mr. Johnson. Frank also worked with Mr. Johnson and was also his friend. Their friendship ended when Frank found out about his scheme. Frank has spent a lot of time compiling as much information and evidence as he could to prove that Mr. Johnson embezzled the money from the video store for his own personal gain. Remember, it's not Frank's word against Mr. Johnson, it's the videotape confession that Frank has against Mr. Johnson that is going to count. Frank made a mistake years ago and doesn't want to get blamed for the embezzlement scheme that Mr. Johnson perpetrated. At this point of the story, Frank is paying his debt to society, which is his personal debt. The video store was not involved. Right now, Frank has two goals in life. First, to clear his name, and second, to make sure that Mr. Johnson has to be punished for his wrongdoing. The owner of the video store told me that she really appreciated all Frank's hard work on the video store's investigation of Mr. Johnson, and she will have his job waiting for him when he returns home. Witness number 3 was a very close friend of Mr. Johnson. They both worked at the same private club, and Mr. Johnson gave him a free membership and free rentals at the video store. Witness number 4 worked in a jewelry store on Jewelers Row and was also a good friend of Mr. Johnson, who sold him an expensive engagement ring. Mr. Johnson also gave this guy a free membership and free rentals at the video store. Witness number 5 has been friends with Mr. Johnson for about 10 years. When Mr. Johnson, for example, needed a car, he got it from this guy. Mr. Johnson was seen with this guy a lot. The video store thinks that witness number 5 could have been involved in Mr. Johnson's scheme. You guessed it. He gave this guy a free membership and free rentals at the video store. Witness number 6 was the owner of the flower shop where Mr. Johnson worked for 6 years. This flower shop was located a half a block from the video store. Mr. Johnson's scheme wouldn't have worked in the flower shop because they didn't accept credit cards and therefore didn't have an access device. Mr. Johnson gave witness number 6 a free membership and free rentals at the video store. Witness number 7 was Mr. Johnson's fiancée. They have been dating for about 2 years. Mr. Johnson bought her an expensive engagement ring from witness number 4 and gave her a free membership and free rentals at the video store. Witness number 8 was an employee at the video store and was very friendly with Mr. Johnson in and out of the video store. They used to go to clubs after work. Witness number 8 got a better paying job and she deleted her membership before she moved on. The owner of the video store has this witness's address and phone number on file in case her testimony is needed later. Witness number 9 is Frank's lawyer and was contacted as soon as Frank discovered Mr. Johnson's scheme. and is holding some evidence for safekeeping and doesn't have a membership in the video store. He would be a credible witness if needed. Witness number 10 became very good friends with Mr. Johnson. They went shopping, they played pool, they partied at local clubs, and they drove around together just for the fun of it. Mr. Johnson tried to get this guy to be a partner in his embezzlement scheme. He refused. This witness must know all about Mr. Johnson's scheme. If he refused to be part of it, the video store feels that this guy would be a very good witness if needed. Witness number 10 was also Frank's best friend for 10 years and is the guy that helped me when Frank went to the prison camp. Witness number 11 was Mr. Johnson's mother and a possible co-conspirator in her son's scheme against the video store. When she was contacted by the banks and the video store, she gave conflicting stories. Witness number 12 was a bank employee who helped Mr. Johnson perpetrate his scheme and was probably the teller at the bank and could be a co-conspirator if this individual told Mr. Johnson about the $10,000 rule. Since this witness' name is unknown, the video store would have to do research on the bank's tellers. Witness number 13, yes, it's me, the author of this expose.